There is a calling placed on the lives of certain people that cannot be ignored, postponed, or denied. These are not ordinary individuals. These are the ones heaven has marked. Those born to carry divine assignments, kingdom mandates, and generational authority. And when their season of awakening arrives, it is not subtle. It is not silent. It comes with symptoms that scream from the spirit realm. You have been chosen for more. You see, spiritual awakening is not a church service. It's not goosebumps during a worship song. It is a collision between your divine purpose and your current reality. It shakes you. It breaks you. It awakens something ancient and holy within you. And the most powerful chosen ones will tell you, it didn't start with applause. It started with pain. When you are chosen for something powerful, God doesn't send a calendar invite. He sends disruption. Divine disruption is often the first and clearest symptom of spiritual awakening. It is not elegant, polite, or comfortable. It is not a whisper. It is a shaking, a sudden, sometimes violent shift in your circumstances that you cannot explain, escape, or ignore. It interrupts the plans you made for yourself and forces you into alignment with the purpose heaven wrote for you. When disruption comes, most people misunderstand it. They label it as an attack, a failure, or even a punishment. But in reality, it is the gentle but firm hand of a loving God, pulling you out of the comfort of the ordinary into the discomfort of the extraordinary. This disruption doesn't ask your permission. It doesn't wait for the timing you think is best. It invades your schedule, shakes your routine, breaks your expectations, and often leaves you standing in the rubble of what you thought was stability. That relationship you thought would lead to marriage suddenly ends. That job you were so confident in disappears overnight. Friends you trusted walk away without warning, and at first, it feels like your life is falling apart. But the truth is, it's not falling apart, it's falling into place. Disruption is how God gets the attention of those who are too comfortable in the wrong season. He knows that as long as you're surrounded by predictable comforts, you will resist transformation. So He disrupts what you thought was permanent. He interrupts what you thought was the plan. And He does it not to destroy you, but to deliver you. The shaking is not random. It is calculated. It is targeted. It is strategic. It is heaven's intervention in the affairs of someone who has been marked for destiny. Disruption often comes at the height of comfort. Just when you think you figured things out. Just when you feel like everything is finally in order, the winds begin to blow. The doors begin to close. The people begin to leave, and you are left wondering, God, what are you doing? But that is the very moment your spiritual eyes must open, because what feels like chaos is actually construction. God is building something eternal in you, and He cannot build it on the shaky foundations of your former self. When God calls you, He doesn't just call your gifting, He calls your identity. And sometimes the only way to awaken that identity is to disturb your environment. That is why disruption precedes promotion. Before He takes you up, He tears things down. Before He enlarges your territory, He eliminates the distractions. It is not punishment. It is preparation. God doesn't prepare you with applause. He prepares you with pressure, and pressure always comes wrapped in disruption. The spiritual awakening begins when you stop blaming the enemy for what God is allowing. When you realize that the storm you're in is not meant to drown you, but to drive you deeper, deeper into purpose, deeper into prayer, deeper into obedience. That's when you begin to see the divine fingerprints behind the disruption, because every loss pushed you toward clarity. Every door that closed was a blessing in disguise. Every disappointment was a redirection. And every delay was protection from what would have distracted you from your real assignment. Chosen ones often experience this type of divine disruption because their calling is too great to remain in complacency. You were not made for the shallow end of life. You were not designed to live stuck in cycles of survival. You carry something within you that heaven wants to release into the earth. But before God uses you publicly, He disrupts you privately. He takes you through the fire of uncertainty, the valley of confusion, and the wilderness of waiting, so that when you arrive at your next level, you arrive with depth, wisdom, humility, and power. People may look at your disruption and think you are being punished. They may gossip about your setbacks, mock your loss, or assume you've lost favor with God. But what they cannot see is the blueprint of heaven being unfolded in the midst of your storm. You are not losing, you are being repositioned. You are being retrained. You are being refined in the fire of divine disruption, because where you are going, the old version of you cannot survive. God is not interested in maintaining your comfort. He is invested in manifesting your calling. And often the only way to get you to move is to make where you are uncomfortable. That restlessness you feel is not frustration, it's divine friction. Your spirit is grinding against the limits of your current environment. That is why nothing feels like it used to. That's why conversations that once entertained you now feel empty. That's why old habits are becoming intolerable. Your soul is no longer in agreement with your surroundings. The spiritual symptom of awakening is being triggered, and divine disruption is doing its work. You cannot be elevated while clinging to what is familiar. The call on your life requires separation. Separation from comfort, from past cycles, from surface relationships, from shallow thinking. Disruption forces you to face what you've been avoiding, confront what you've been tolerating, and release what you've been holding on to out of fear. It makes room for what God wants to give you by removing what you no longer need. Don't mistake this disruption as random. It is sacred. It is intentional. Heaven has selected you for a higher purpose, and this shaking is simply the sound of construction. God is building something in you that eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, and minds have not imagined. He is stretching you because He trusts you. He is breaking routine to build revelation. He is tearing down the temporary to establish the eternal. One of the most misunderstood symptoms of a spiritual awakening is isolation. It often comes suddenly, subtly, and without explanation. People who once called daily go silent. Crowds that once celebrated you now seem distant. Even the places that once brought you joy begin to feel empty. This can be a deeply confusing experience, especially when you are walking closely with God, seeking Him, serving Him, and expecting doors to open. Instead, you find yourself in a season where nothing and no one is close. But this is not punishment. It is refinement. When you are chosen by God for something powerful, He has to separate you from the noise before He can release the voice. Isolation is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a divine setup. It is heaven's way of rearranging your environment to prepare you for a higher dimension of clarity, obedience, and spiritual sensitivity. Because when God is about to elevate you, He first eliminates the distractions. The greatest voices in Scripture experience this pattern. Before Moses could lead a nation, he had to endure 40 years in the wilderness. Before David wore a crown, he was isolated with sheep. Before Joseph sat on the throne, he sat in a prison, alone. And before Jesus began His public ministry, He spent 40 days in the wilderness, far from crowds, far from applause, and far from comfort. Why? Because isolation is where identity is confirmed. It's where vision is clarified. It's where voices are silenced so that God's voice can be heard with precision. In isolation, God removes every opinion that competes with His instruction. He removes the pressure of people-pleasing. He strips away false dependencies. And what feels like abandonment is actually alignment. What looks like rejection is actually redirection. God is pulling you away from the crowds not because He's finished with you, but because He's about to release something through you that can't be contaminated by too many voices. It is in isolation that the chosen learn how to walk by faith and not by sight. You don't have anyone clapping for you, affirming you, or guiding you. All you have is the whisper of God in your spirit, and that becomes enough. You learn how to pray when no one's watching. You learn how to worship with no music. You learn how to trust when you can't trace what He's doing. And this is not weakness, it's strength. This is the quiet training ground where warriors are made. Many people run from isolation. They fill it with noise, social media, relationships, distractions, anything to avoid being alone. But those who are truly called must learn to embrace it. Because isolation is not the absence of God. It is often the place where He is most near. It's where He reveals Himself, not through a crowd, but through communion. Not through a sermon, but through stillness. When God begins to isolate you, your natural response may be confusion. You may ask God, why is everyone leaving? Or why does no one check on me anymore? But what you think is people walking away is actually God closing the door. It's Him saying, they can't go where I'm taking you. Some people were only assigned to your past, not your future. And if you insist on dragging them into the next season, they will become a hindrance, not a help. You must understand that elevation requires separation. And separation always feels like loneliness before it reveals its true purpose. In this holy solitude, God begins to stir your spirit. He opens your ears to frequencies you couldn't hear before. He speaks to you in dreams, in whispers, in impressions that cut deep into your soul. You begin to discern things differently. You begin to understand why He removed certain people, closed certain doors, and disrupted your comfort. Isolation also teaches you how to be content with God alone. It removes the idol of needing people's approval. It breaks the addiction to applause. It detoxes your spirit from external validation. And once you're free from that, you become dangerous to the enemy, because you no longer depend on people to confirm what God already said. In this season of isolation, you are being formed, not forgotten. You are being prepared, not punished. God is cultivating depth in you. He's building strength, resilience, and unwavering faith. You may not see the fruit yet, but the root is going deep. And when the time is right, He will reintroduce you, not as who you were, but as who He has transformed you to become. Isolation is the womb of purpose. It is the secret place where God does His greatest work. You will walk out of this season with sharpened discernment, stronger faith, and clearer vision. And the next time you stand before people, you won't be speaking from theory, you'll be speaking from experience. Because the fire of isolation refined your voice. It purified your motives. It stripped away the flesh and awakened the spirit. When God isolates you, He's not punishing you. He's trusting you. Trusting you to walk alone when others need a crowd. Trusting you to believe His voice when no one is confirming it. Trusting you to grow in silence so that when He speaks through you, it carries weight. This is the path of the chosen. And though it feels lonely, it is leading you into your true identity, your divine assignment, and your unstoppable authority. There comes a moment in the life of every chosen individual when the things that once satisfied suddenly lose their flavor. The schedule that once felt meaningful now feels mechanical. The conversations that once energized now feel shallow. The ambitions that once burned brightly begin to dim. It's not because you're depressed. It's not because you're lost. It's because your spirit is being realigned. That inner restlessness you can't quite explain is not a crisis, it's a calling, a divine recalibration, a supernatural nudge that says, there is more. Spiritual restlessness is one of the most telling symptoms of awakening. It's not external. It's not obvious to everyone. On the outside, you may still show up, still smile, still serve, but inside there is a growing sense of urgency, discomfort, even discontent. It feels like something is shifting, and you can't go back to being who you were. That is not your imagination. It's your spirit outgrowing your surroundings. When God begins to realign you, He does not always send a prophet or a burning bush. Sometimes He sends a divine discomfort that shakes you at your core. You may try to shake it off, go on a vacation, distract yourself, get busier, but nothing works. Because this restlessness is sacred. It's the Spirit of God interrupting your rhythm to reposition your purpose. Those who are chosen can't settle where others settle. You weren't designed to live according to the systems of this world. You were not wired to chase popularity, possessions, or positions. You were born to establish kingdom culture on the earth. And when your spirit senses that your environment no longer supports that assignment, it begins to stir. That stir is not confusion. It's confirmation that something greater is calling you forward. Many people mislabel this season. They say they're in a rut. They say they're just off. But no, this is the divine friction between who you are now and who you are becoming. It is the space between seasons where your past no longer fits and your future is not yet fully visible. And in that space, God does His most delicate work. He begins to shift your focus. He rearranges your desires. He starts stripping away anything that could hinder your next level. This realignment often begins with dissatisfaction. The job you once celebrated now feels like a cage. The circle of friends you once loved now feels spiritually dry. The plans you made now seem too small. That's not rebellion, it's revelation. God is revealing that your current surroundings cannot contain your next assignment. The world system will tell you to stay where it's safe, where it's stable, where it's predictable. But the kingdom system is different. God calls the chosen out of the boat to walk on water. He calls them into the wilderness to prepare them for leadership. He calls them away from comfort to step into calling. And this calling doesn't always come with clear instructions. It often begins as restlessness. You may find yourself asking questions you never asked before. Why am I still here? What am I really supposed to be doing? Why don't I feel fulfilled anymore? These are not signs that you're backsliding. These are signs that your spirit is waking up to a deeper reality. You're not losing interest, you're gaining insight. You're not falling apart, you're being pulled together. Realignment means God is shifting your internal compass. What used to excite you now exhausts you. What once felt like success now feels like distraction. You begin to crave things you never cared for before. Stillness, wisdom, depth, truth, purpose. You start to notice how empty the noise is. You begin to desire fewer things, but deeper ones. This is evidence that your inner man is maturing and your external world must now come into agreement with your spiritual growth. You resign to your inner man and your external world must now come into agreement with your spiritual growth. This restlessness will not be solved by surface level fixes. You won't be able to pray it away or fast it into silence because it's not a prompting, it's a prompting. You're being prepared for alignment with your kingdom assignment, and God will not let you settle for anything less than what He designed you to be. So He makes you uncomfortable in places you once called home. He allows boredom to invade routines that once felt productive. He lets you feel the ache of misalignment so that you'll be motivated to move. Sometimes this spiritual realignment feels like loss. You lose interest in what others love. You feel out of place in circles you used to thrive in. You stop laughing at the jokes, engaging in the gossip, participating in the chaos. But what you're really losing is anything that does not match your next season. You are shedding the skin of who you were so you can walk boldly into who you're becoming. The chosen must understand that this restlessness is not random. It is holy. It is heaven's way of pulling you out of the crowd and calling you into consecration. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. Positioned to hear, to see, and to move with clarity. Your steps are being ordered even when it feels like everything around you is falling apart. That inner fire that won't let you quit, that's divine alignment taking place. You may feel misunderstood. People around you may not get it. They'll say you've changed. They'll question your silence, your shifts, your seriousness. But that's because they haven't felt what you feel. They haven't seen what you see. They haven't heard what you've heard in the secret place. Don't expect them to understand a calling they weren't given. Spiritual restlessness is a birth pain. It's a sign that you're carrying something too big for your current environment. And as it grows, your spirit will push you to make room. That's why you can't settle. That's why you can't get comfortable. That's why you're still searching, not for something new, but for something true. What you're feeling is not frustration, it's formation. God is forming in you the strength, the faith, the character, and the capacity to carry what's coming next. When the spirit of a chosen one begins to awaken, one of the clearest and most undeniable signs is the transformation of their dream life. It is not random. It is not coincidental. It is a divine shift, one that often takes place quietly in the night while the rest of the world sleeps. Dreams that once seemed disjointed or forgettable now carry weight, clarity, and urgency. They are no longer ordinary, they are prophetic. They become messages, warnings, instructions, and glimpses into the unseen. Your sleep turns into sacred classroom sessions where God begins to speak directly to your spirit. You see, dreams have always been a strategic communication channel between heaven and earth. Long before there were pulpits, microphones, and social media, God spoke to his chosen vessels through dreams. From Joseph in Egypt to Daniel in Babylon, from Jacob on his journey to Paul in the New Testament, dreams have been the canvas upon which God paints his divine will. And when he begins to stir something significant in your life, he often starts by awakening the language of your subconscious. You don't just start seeing things. You begin understanding things that your natural mind could not grasp while awake. As your spiritual sensitivity increases, so does the intensity of your dreams. They become more vivid, filled with color, emotion, and clarity. Sometimes it's not just what you see, it's what you feel. You wake up and your heart is stirred. Your thoughts are focused. You sense that something important has been deposited into your spirit, even if you can't fully explain it with words. This is not imagination. This is spiritual impartation. The veil between the natural and supernatural becomes thinner in your dream life, and God uses that space to recalibrate your direction. For many chosen ones, this awakening of dreams begins with patterns. You may notice recurring symbols, consistent messages, or even visitations that begin to repeat over several nights. These are not simply mental leftovers from your day. They are divine breadcrumbs pointing you toward a higher level of awareness. God is drawing your attention to something. He is calling you to a deeper level of discernment. Your spirit is being trained to interpret what others ignore. You may dream about people and later discover they were in danger. You may see places you've never visited, only to find yourself there in the future. You may receive instructions that prepare you for decisions that haven't yet presented themselves in the natural. This is the prophetic nature of awakened dreams. They speak not just to your present, but to your potential. Not just to your mind, but to your mission. At this stage, your dreams also become increasingly instructional. God uses them to teach you about yourself, about others, about your calling. You may find yourself receiving strategies for your next steps, warnings about wrong associations, or even blueprints for things you've never studied. This is because your spirit is now open. It is listening. It is in alignment. And God responds to that openness with revelation. He doesn't waste dreams on those who are not awake spiritually. But once your spirit is stirred, the dreams become detailed, clear, sometimes even overwhelming. And this is all part of your preparation. During this time, the enemy will also try to sow confusion through counterfeit dreams. Because he knows that your dream life has become a highway of divine truth, he will attempt to inject fear, confusion, or distraction. But when your spirit is attuned to God, you begin to discern the difference. You know what brings peace and what brings torment, what aligns with truth and what contradicts it. Your spiritual maturity will allow you to test what you dream against the character and voice of God. And in doing so, your dreams become not just visions, but weapons, tools of discernment and direction. Many people will not understand the weight of your dreams. They may dismiss them as just imagination or emotional residue. But the chosen know better. You know when God is speaking. You know when you're being warned or called or comforted in your sleep. This is not just rest. It is revelation. You wake up with clarity you didn't have the day before. You sense solutions to problems you couldn't fix. You receive wisdom beyond your years. And it all happens because your spirit is alive and active even when your body rests. This phase of vivid prophetic dreaming also produces hunger. You find yourself waking up early just to pray over what you saw. You begin to write things down, not because they're strange, but because you know they're significant. God begins to entrust you with insights that don't just affect your life, but impact others. He gives you dreams that are intercessory in nature, calling you to pray for people, cities, or situations you haven't physically encountered. This is the kingdom at work within you. You're not just dreaming anymore. You're participating in spiritual assignments while you sleep. And as this gift continues to develop, you also begin to recognize when dreams are not just for interpretation, but for instruction. God shows you what to do next, who to connect with, who to avoid, where to go and when. These dreams aren't fantasy, they are functional. They guide your waking life because your sleeping life has become a sanctuary. This is what it means to be chosen and awakened. You are not left in the dark. God illuminates your path even in the night. He speaks to your spirit when your mind is quiet. He reveals hidden things, answers unspoken questions, and prepares you for battles you haven't yet seen. Your dreams are no longer just dreams. They are encounters. They are divine communications. They are sacred, strategic, and sent to you because you have been chosen to carry revelation in this generation. When a chosen one begins to awaken spiritually, something subtle yet profound begins to take place within them. It's not always loud or obvious. It doesn't usually begin with a dramatic revelation or a miraculous encounter. It often starts in the quiet corners of the heart, with a shift in appetite. The things that once excited you no longer satisfy. The environments you once chased now feel shallow. The conversations, habits, entertainment, and distractions that once seemed harmless suddenly feel like noise. This is not boredom. It is divine transition. God is preparing your spirit for higher dimensions. And the first symptom is the loss of appetite for the world. This inner transformation is what we can call a spiritual detox. It is as if heaven is purging your soul of every unnecessary attachment that could dilute your calling. Your heart begins to crave depth. Your soul longs for purity. Your mind becomes increasingly sensitive to the things you once ignored. It's not that you're trying to be religious or legalistic. It's that you genuinely feel different. Something deep inside you no longer aligns with what you used to enjoy. It's not a matter of behavior modification. It's a matter of spiritual reorientation. Social distractions begin to lose their grip on you. Social media no longer excites you the way it used to. Music filled with empty or toxic messages irritates your spirit. Gossip becomes exhausting. Shallow conversations no longer hold your attention. The movies, shows, and environments that once made you feel alive now make you feel uncomfortable. Why? Because the Holy Spirit is fine-tuning your atmosphere, is protecting the soil of your soul so that the seed of your purpose can grow. When you are called for something greater, God begins to isolate your appetites so you don't contaminate your anointing. The higher you're called to go, the more careful you must be about what you feed your soul. And so He begins to remove your taste for the temporary. He takes away your craving for noise, chaos, and attention. He weans you off the superficial and begins to nurture you with substance. What once entertained you now drains you. What once amused you now offends you. This is not by accident. It is by divine design. You begin to realize that everything carries a frequency. Music has a frequency. Words have a frequency. Environments carry a frequency. And when your spirit is being prepared for higher dimensions, it can no longer dwell comfortably in low frequencies. The vibration of your soul begins to rise, and with it comes a new standard, a higher standard, a kingdom standard, one that does not settle for stimulation but seeks revelation, one that does not crave distraction but craves direction. At this stage, people may begin to misunderstand you. They might say you've become too serious, that you're too deep, or that you've changed. And they're right. You have changed, but not in the way they think. You're not trying to prove a point. You're simply not hungry for the same things anymore. You don't have to argue with anyone about it. Your silence is not judgment. It's a reflection of your transformation. You are being pulled into a new dimension of spiritual maturity, and that requires a new level of spiritual appetite. Just like a person recovering from a sickness can no longer tolerate unhealthy foods, your spirit can no longer tolerate what once poisoned you slowly. You may have indulged in certain things when you were spiritually asleep, but now that you are awakening, your senses are alert. You can feel when something is not aligned with God's purpose for you. You can discern when something is feeding your flesh but starving your spirit. And that awareness is not a burden, it is a blessing. It means your spiritual immune system is working. This loss of appetite for worldly distractions also makes room for a hunger for divine presence. You begin to crave stillness. You want to read, reflect, and pray. You begin to desire worship, not just the sound, but the surrender. You find joy in solitude because your spirit is feeding on things that can't be bought, streamed, or scrolled through. Peace begins to replace entertainment. Purpose begins to replace popularity. Wisdom begins to replace stimulation. It's important to understand that this shift is not seasonal, it's strategic. God is not just changing your appetite for the sake of change. He's preparing you to carry something holy, something that cannot be released through a distracted vessel. You can't carry divine blueprints while consuming worldly content. You can't hear heaven clearly while feeding constantly on earthly noise. So God begins to create distance between you and the distractions that used to define your days. This detox is also a test. Will you run back to what once made you feel comfortable when the silence feels long? Will you reach for the familiar when the sacred feels unfamiliar? Or will you sit in the discomfort of the detox long enough to experience the beauty of divine alignment? Many don't make it past this point, not because they aren't called, but because they keep trying to mix consecration with compromise. But you, if you are truly chosen, will begin to welcome this loss of appetite as evidence that God is near. You may not know exactly where you're going. You may not even know why you no longer want what you used to want. But trust that your spirit does. Your spirit is already aligning with the next level. The people, platforms, and patterns that are coming into your life will require a different version of you. One that is undistracted, undivided, and unstoppable. Losing your appetite for worldly things is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. It is proof that you are no longer a slave to what used to control you. You are being prepared to walk in power, not popularity. In wisdom, not noise. In clarity, not confusion. This is what it means to be set apart. This is what it means to be ready. When a chosen one begins to spiritually awaken, there is a distinct and powerful shift in perception. A new sensitivity that cannot be explained by education or human logic. It is not learned through books, sermons, or experience. It is something deeper, something divine. Suddenly, without warning or effort, you begin to feel the invisible. You walk into rooms and sense tension before a word is spoken. You meet people and perceive what they don't say out loud. You step into environments and discern the spiritual climate instantly. This is not suspicion. This is not paranoia. This is discernment. Spiritual discernment, activated by divine ordination. Chosen ones are not like everyone else. They are not called to see what is on the surface. They are called to see what is hidden beneath it. And when their spirit is awakened, their discernment becomes razor sharp. What others dismiss as just vibes or a bad mood, you recognize as spiritual warfare, manipulation, or divine warning. You begin to notice patterns in people. You hear not only their words, but their motives. You sense the spirit behind the conversation. You pick up the temperature of a space in seconds, not just emotionally, but spiritually. This level of discernment is not arrogance. It is alignment. It's not something you developed. It's something that was activated by God when He pulled you into a higher calling. He opened your spiritual eyes to see what others are too distracted, too carnal, or too wounded to notice. And this gift is not for entertainment. It is for protection, guidance, and assignment. God is sharpening your discernment so you won't be deceived in the next season, because where He is taking you, the warfare is more sophisticated and the enemy's tactics are more subtle. You must be able to know what's happening in the room even when nothing is being said. There are moments when you will enter a place and feel immediate peace, and you'll know the atmosphere is aligned with the Spirit of God. But there will be other times, more frequent than you'd like, where your spirit will recoil. You'll feel a tightening in your chest, a heaviness in the air, a pull in your gut. You won't be able to explain it to those around you, but you'll know something is off. And that knowing is not emotional, it is spiritual. It's a sign that your inner man has been awakened to the realities of the unseen. This is one of the clearest symptoms that you are chosen and being elevated spiritually. You are no longer operating purely in the natural. You are being governed by the Spirit. You are tuned to heaven's frequency. And because of this, you can now sense demonic activity, spiritual unrest, or even angelic presence without anyone having to say a word. You can walk into a home, a church, a business, or even a casual gathering and immediately perceive what spirit is ruling that space. Hey, this kind of discernment comes with weight. It can feel like a burden at times because you see what others ignore. You hear what others miss, and you feel what others numb themselves to. Sometimes you'll wish you could unsee things. You'll wish you could just enjoy a conversation without analyzing the spirit behind it. But deep down you understand, this is the cost of being chosen. This is the evidence that your awakening is real. With this sensitivity comes a new kind of responsibility. God is not showing you atmospheres just so you can observe them. He is showing you so you can shift them. You are not called to just notice the darkness, you are called to carry light into it. The reason you can sense chaos is because you carry peace. The reason you can feel heaviness is because you carry breakthrough. Your presence is not passive, it is powerful. And when you walk into a room, you don't just enter it, you influence it. You begin to realize that your very presence is warfare. The moment you show up, the spiritual climate shifts. Demons get uncomfortable. Spirits of confusion get exposed. Hidden motives come to the surface. And this is why some people will dislike you without reason. They won't even know why. But their spirit will recognize your authority even before you say a word. This is not personal, it's spiritual. God is awakening this in you because you must now walk with precision. You can no longer afford to operate blindly. Every room you enter, every connection you make, every invitation you receive must be filtered through spiritual discernment. What looks good might be a trap. What feels right may be coated in deception. And only a sensitive spirit can make the distinction. This is why your discernment had to be activated. Because deception is rising. The counterfeit is louder than ever. And the enemy is dressing in light to confuse even the chosen. But not you. Your spirit is alive. Your ears are tuned. Your vision is clear. And while others are distracted by the surface, you are moved by the Spirit. You walk carefully, you listen deeply, you move strategically, because you've been given the ability to discern atmospheres. And that is no small gift. That is the gift of those called to lead, to intercede, to protect, and to govern. That is the gift of the awakened. You'll find that as this gift grows, your tolerance for certain environments diminishes. You'll no longer be able to sit in the presence of chaos without feeling grieved. You'll no longer be able to entertain conversations laced with manipulation, gossip, or rebellion. You'll begin to walk away, not because you're better, but because your spirit has outgrown what your flesh once tolerated. This is what maturity looks like. This is what separation looks like. And this is what kingdom sensitivity feels like. This spiritual symptom, this instant discernment of atmospheres, is not random, it is assigned. God has activated something in you that many people will never understand, but heaven recognizes. The earth needs people like you, people who can walk into dark places and bring light, who can sense danger before it strikes, who can see truth in the midst of deception. This is not just a feeling, it's a calling. It's not just awareness, it's an anointing. Hear me clearly. When God begins to awaken you, it's not for show, it's for assignment. The symptoms you're experiencing are not random. They are signs that you have been marked for something greater. The disruption is divine, the isolation is intentional. The restlessness is prophetic. The dreams are instructional. The detox is spiritual. And the discernment is proof that your spirit has entered a higher dimension. You are not crazy. You are not overthinking. You are not broken. You are becoming. What you feel is your spirit standing up inside of you and refusing to be silent anymore. The world around you may not recognize it, but heaven has already approved it. You are not being left behind, you are being set apart. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. And you are not being emptied, you are being positioned for divine fullness. Now is not the time to shrink. Now is not the time to go back to what's familiar. Now is the time to walk boldly in what you're becoming. You are the evidence that God is still awakening warriors in this generation. And if you embrace the symptoms, if you yield to the process, if you trust the hand of God, even in the silence, then everything He's activating in you will soon manifest through you. You are not just chosen to feel, you were chosen to fulfill. So step into it, own it, live it, because your awakening is not the end. It's the beginning of your divine assignment on earth. There are seasons in your life when heaven begins to rearrange everything around you, not to destroy you, but to prepare you. And sometimes the preparation feels like pressure. But I want to declare this to you today. You are not being buried. You are being planted. You are being positioned for divine multiplication. God does not raise millionaires for luxury. He raises them for legacy. And before He increases your life with wealth, He matures your spirit with wisdom. If you're feeling stretched, separated, or stirred, it's not random. It's a sign. God is preparing you to become a millionaire, not just in your bank account, but in your spirit, in your vision, and in your impact. Let's walk through these 7 prophetic signs. These aren't ordinary signals. These are divine fingerprints of preparation. You feel deeply discontent with average living. It's not because you're ungrateful or prideful. It's because something inside of you knows there is more. More to life, more to your purpose, more to your potential. What once satisfied you no longer quenches your thirst. The conversations that once energized you now feel empty. The routines you once embraced now feel repetitive and hollow. Your heart, you find yourself waking up with questions that demand answers and going to bed with a heart that refuses to settle. This is not frustration for the sake of frustration. It is divine agitation, a sacred unrest stirred by God Himself. When God is preparing you to walk into a new dimension, He often starts by disrupting the one you're currently in. He doesn't always speak through fire or thunder. Sometimes He speaks through dissatisfaction. He begins to turn the water you once drank into sand. The places you found comfort now feel uncomfortable. The spaces where you felt at home now feel foreign. This is not a punishment. It's preparation. God is moving you away from average because average can no longer contain what He's placed inside of you. The hunger you feel for more is not greed, it is growth. You're being stretched because God is expanding your capacity. You are no longer content with merely surviving. You're being called to thrive. You're not just looking for a paycheck, you're craving purpose. You don't just want status, you want significance. What you're experiencing is a divine shift, a holy dissatisfaction that is breaking you out of your comfort zone. Because the comfort zone is where dreams go to die. But the discontent, that's the birthplace of destiny. You look around and wonder why others seem content with less, while you can't shake the feeling that you're built for more. You see people settle into systems, into jobs, into routines, and you wonder why they seem at peace while your spirit feels like it's in labor. That's because you are carrying something they're not carrying. You've been marked by God for an assignment that won't let you rest. There's an anointing on your life that refuses to be quiet. And that anointing is provoking discomfort in every area that no longer aligns with your calling. You may even try to silence it. You may tell yourself to be grateful, to stop overthinking, to just accept things the way they are. But the inner whisper keeps growing louder. This is not it. There's more. You try to convince yourself to settle, but something inside of you fights back. That something is your God-given identity pushing against limitation. It's your purpose knocking on the door of your present, demanding entrance into your future. The very fact that you feel restless is proof that you are not meant to live a life of quiet desperation. You are meant to live a life of bold fulfillment. God disrupts your comfort before He delivers your calling. You must be willing to leave what is familiar in order to embrace what is divine. Just like Abraham had to leave his father's house without knowing exactly where he was going, you too are being called out of normal so you can step into next. And just like Joseph couldn't stay in the pit or even in Potiphar's house because there was a palace with his name on it, you can't stay in places that confine you. There is a place that is waiting for you. You were made to rule, not to rot. You were made to reign, not to remain stagnant. This discontentment is not your enemy, it is your escort. It's escorting you out of mediocrity and into mastery. It's escorting you out of average and into abundance. And yes, it feels uncomfortable. Growth always does. But the more uncomfortable you become with average, the closer you are to breakthrough. Because what you're feeling is not simply personal dissatisfaction. It is spiritual preparation. God is stripping away what you've outgrown so He can dress you in what's been waiting for you. He's closing the door on old levels so He can open gates to new realms. Every time you try to shrink, He stretches you again. Every time you try to dim your light, He calls you to shine brighter. Every time you try to make peace with smallness, He reminds you of the greatness He placed inside of you. You may not know all the details yet, but you do know this: you can't stay where you are. Something is calling you out. Something is pushing you forward. Something won't let you go back to just enough when you've been destined for overflow. You're being pulled into solitude and silence, not because you've done something wrong, but because God is doing something right within you. The noise is starting to fade. The crowd that once surrounded you is thinning. The phone calls are fewer. The invitations are slowing down. And while it may feel like rejection, it's actually redirection. God is isolating you, not to punish you, but to prepare you. There is something sacred about this silence, something divine about this distance. You're not being abandoned, you're being set apart. When God begins to elevate a person, He doesn't do it in the spotlight, He does it in the shadows. He doesn't crown you in public before He breaks you in private. Before you walk into manifestation, you must first survive isolation. Before you're trusted with visibility, you must be proven in obscurity. Solitude is the training ground for significance. Silence is the chamber where destiny is developed. When God is preparing to make you a spiritual and life millionaire, He must first remove all the voices that compete with His voice. He takes you away from the noise of people so you can hear the sound of purpose. He shuts the doors you thought you needed so you'll learn to walk through the doors He ordained. He removes the distractions you once called friends so you can discover the true identity of your calling. In the silence, He's recalibrating your vision. In the solitude, He's reshaping your thinking. You may not understand it now, but this loneliness is laced with divine design. There are things God wants to show you that He can't show you in a crowd. There are secrets He's ready to whisper that require silence around you. When God is preparing to deposit something uncommon in your spirit, He must first create uncommon space around your life. Don't despise this season of separation. It's in this quiet season that your ears become sharper, your discernment grows deeper, your spirit becomes stronger. This is where God gives you the blueprints for your next level. This is where He reveals the strategy for your assignment. You begin to notice that certain relationships feel forced. Conversations you used to enjoy now feel out of place. Environments you once thrived in now feel foreign. That's not a coincidence. That's God emptying your atmosphere. He's clearing the room of old energy to make space for divine clarity. He's calling you to a higher place, and that requires a quieter posture. You can't bring the noise of the crowd into the place of consecration. This is a wilderness moment, but it's not one of punishment, it's one of purpose. Even Jesus withdrew from the multitudes to pray. Even David tended sheep alone before he ruled a kingdom. Even Moses encountered God on the backside of a desert. Even Joseph was separated in prison before he was elevated in the palace. And you are no different. If God is isolating you, it means He's identifying you. If He's pulling you away, it means He's pushing you forward. He's not leaving you behind. He's launching you ahead. The earth will put you in the gate, slowly and slow. There is a stillness that precedes every spiritual shift. When heaven is about to speak, earth must quiet down. And that's what's happening in your life. God is making you sensitive to His whisper. He's refining your spirit, removing the residue of old mindsets, deleting toxic attachments, and building in you a strength that is not dependent on applause or affirmation. You're learning to walk by faith, not by validation. You're learning to build without needing to be seen. That's the mark of someone being trusted with more. God cannot multiply what is still tied to noise and chaos. So He calls you out, just like He called Abraham out of his father's house, out of familiarity, out of comfort. He says, come away, come higher, come deeper. And the ones who respond to that call of solitude are the ones He uses to impact generations. You are not losing connection, you are gaining clarity. You are not becoming invisible, you are becoming invaluable. God hides what He treasures. And He's hiding you, not because you are forgotten, but because you are being formed. God is increasing your capacity to handle pressure. This is not an accident. It's not bad luck. It's not spiritual attack in every case. What you're feeling is expansion, not punishment. You're being stretched, not broken. You're being made strong enough to carry what you've been praying for. Because God does not give heavy blessings to people with fragile foundations. Before He releases abundance, He must reinforce your inner structure. Pressure always precedes promotion. If you're asking for more, then God must prepare you for more. And that preparation doesn't come through ease. It comes through weight. The weight of responsibility, the weight of obedience, the weight of character, the weight of leadership. Many people want the platform but not the pressure. They want the blessing but not the burden. They want the success but not the stretching. But in God's kingdom, there is no shortcut to glory. You must be tested before you're trusted. That's why everything feels heavier lately. That's why your days feel longer, your nights feel more restless. That's why the situations you used to manage with ease now seem more intense. It's not because you're weaker. It's because your next season will demand more strength. You're not being broken down, you're being built up. The resistance you feel is the same resistance a muscle feels under pressure. It's necessary for growth. Without the pressure, there's no strength. Without the tension, there's no increase. God is teaching you how to stay steady in the storm, how to trust when answers are delayed, how to remain faithful when fruit is not yet visible. He's teaching you how to lead when it's lonely, how to endure when it's difficult, how to believe when it seems like nothing's changing. This kind of training cannot happen in comfort. It only happens in pressure, because pressure reveals what comfort conceals. It exposes the cracks. It forces you to lean into God and not into your own understanding. He's enlarging your spiritual lungs so you can breathe at higher altitudes. He's strengthening your emotional core so you won't collapse when the weight of favor rests on you. Many people want to be millionaires in life and spirit, but few are willing to endure the process it takes to hold that kind of abundance. It's not just about money. It's about maturity. God doesn't want your promotion to become your prison, so He's forming in you a strength that matches the blessing that's coming. Every challenge you're facing right now is tailored to your future. It's not random, it's not chaotic, it's calculated. God is a master builder, And he knows that a shallow foundation cannot support a tall building. So he's digging deeper even if it hurts. He's going beneath the surface even if you don't understand it. Because you can't go higher until you go deeper. That's the principle of pressure. And right now God is qualifying you through what you're surviving. Think of the olive. It only releases oil when crushed. Think of the diamond. It only forms under extreme pressure. Think of the wine. It only flows after the grape is pressed. You're not under attack, you're under process. And this process is refining you, humbling you, preparing you. It's aligning your soul with His will. It's making your heart strong enough to carry wealth without it destroying you. It's making your mind sharp enough to manage vision without it overwhelming you. God is building emotional durability in you. He's showing you how to walk with grace even when you're under fire. He's showing you how to stay patient, how to keep your integrity, how to protect your peace. Because what's coming to you will require wisdom, not just charisma. It will demand discipline, not just desire. It will call for consistency, not just passion. And only pressure can train you for that kind of calling. So when life gets heavy, don't ask God to take the weight away. Ask Him to build your shoulders. Ask Him to stretch your capacity. Ask Him to give you the heart, the wisdom, and the endurance to carry what you've never carried before. Because every ounce of pressure you feel today is connected to the purpose that's being birthed through you tomorrow. You're not just being tested, you're being trusted. You're experiencing divine ideas, visions, and creativity, and they're coming fast, often without warning. You may be driving and a business idea drops into your spirit. You may be praying and a blueprint for a ministry flashes across your mind. You lie down to sleep and instead of dreams that fade, you receive visions that stick. This is not coincidence. It's not random imagination. It's revelation. It is a revelation. God is beginning to pour strategy into your spirit because He's preparing you to build what has never been built, solve what has never been solved, and lead where others have failed. He's awakening the creator within you because you were made in the image of a creator. You were never meant to be a copy. You were born to be an original. And when God begins to position someone to become a millionaire in spirit and in life, He doesn't start by increasing their bank account. He starts by expanding their mindset. Because true wealth flows through wisdom. Prosperity begins in the heart, not the wallet. So when divine ideas are suddenly showing up, it's a sign that your internal capacity has matured enough to carry what heaven is ready to release. These aren't just good ideas. They are God ideas. And the difference is this: good ideas entertain, but God ideas transform. They don't just make sense, they make impact. And they come with a weight that stirs your spirit and interrupts your sleep. God doesn't give you ideas that maintain the status quo. He gives you disruptive, solution-oriented, people-blessing ideas that align with your assignment. These ideas won't leave you alone. They keep resurfacing, reminding you that you are made for more than survival. You are made for strategy, innovation, and vision. You're beginning to see things other people overlook. You're recognizing needs and thinking, why doesn't anyone fix this? That's because the solution is inside of you. God is revealing what needs to be done because He's trusting you to do it. The creativity flowing through you is not self-generated. It's spirit-activated. You're receiving downloads from heaven because you've proven you'll steward them well. You're not seeking fame, you're seeking purpose. You're not chasing money, you're chasing meaning. That's why God is choosing you. Some of these ideas may feel too big for you. That's the point. If they didn't stretch you, they wouldn't be from God. He gives you vision that requires faith, not familiarity. You're not supposed to have all the resources yet. You're supposed to trust the one who gave you the vision to provide the provision. These God-given ideas are like seeds. And seeds don't look like what they'll become. But if you nurture them, protect them, and speak life over them, they will grow into something that not only blesses you, but blesses others. This season of creativity is sacred. You must treat it with honor. Guard your spirit. Protect your space. Be careful who you share your vision with, because not everyone will understand it. Some people will try to minimize what God has maximized inside you. But don't shrink to fit their comfort zones. Don't apologize for being visionary. Don't feel guilty for thinking bigger. God didn't give you those ideas to make you popular. He gave them to make you impactful. Is stirring divine creativity in your mind, not just for business or financial gain, but for kingdom influence. He wants you to establish systems that serve communities. He wants you to create platforms that lift up voices for His glory. He wants you to generate wealth, not just for self-indulgence, but for legacy, for ministry, for change. Every divine idea you receive is a key to unlock doors that others thought were permanently shut. Every vision is a glimpse into the future God is inviting you to partner with. So if you're suddenly feeling a rush of creativity, don't ignore it. Don't brush it off. Write it down. Pray over it. Study and prepare. These divine ideas are heaven's investment into your destiny. They are not random. They are assignments. And those who respond with faith, obedience, and diligence will see those ideas become movements. Those visions become reality, and that creativity become the bridge between spiritual purpose and real-world impact. You're learning the value of stewardship and discipline not because someone forced it on you, but because the Spirit of God is awakening something mature within you. You're starting to see that what you mismanage, you will lose, and what you manage well, God will multiply. You're becoming aware that prayers alone do not produce wealth. Principles do. You're realizing that favor without order leads to frustration. And now you are no longer drawn to the excitement of breakthrough without the structure to sustain it. This is a clear sign that God is preparing you not just to receive increase, but to maintain it, grow it, and honor it. You're being trained to handle overflow, not emotionally, but responsibly. You're not chasing blessings anymore. You're being shaped into someone who can be trusted with them. The season of recklessness is over. God is calling you to high accountability, greater structure, and intentional living. You're beginning to feel a shift in your appetite. You used to waste time without guilt, but now every minute feels precious. You used to spend without thinking, but now you're planning, budgeting, saving, sowing. You're developing new habits that align with the vision God is placing in front of you. Waking up earlier, reading more, saying no to distractions. These aren't random behavior changes. They are spiritual indicators that your internal capacity is matching your external calling. Discipline is becoming your new delight. Not because it's easy, but because it's producing fruit. You're seeing how order creates opportunity, how boundaries protect blessings, how systems birth sustainability. You're no longer driven by feelings, you're led by purpose. And that shift is a sign that your life is maturing for wealth and influence on a whole new level. God doesn't bless chaos, He blesses order. In Genesis, before He filled the earth, He formed it. He separated light from darkness, water from land. He established systems before He released substance. And He's doing the same in you. Before He pours out favor, He's setting your house in order. Your mindset is being rearranged. Your schedule is being reevaluated. Because God won't put $1 million mantle on a heart that can't manage $10 habits. You're starting to see that stewardship isn't just about money, it's about your energy, your focus, your relationships, your words, your body, your assignments. You're learning how to prioritize what matters and let go of what doesn't. You're realizing that saying yes to everything is not loyalty, it's leakage. You're not available to every invitation because your purpose is too precious to be scattered. In this season, God is revealing the difference between being busy and being productive. He's teaching you that progress isn't about movement, it's about direction. You're no longer working harder just to survive, you're working wiser so you can thrive. And behind every daily discipline, there's a divine deposit. You're building muscles that will carry the weight of destiny. The people around you may not understand why you're changing. They may call it strict, intense, or even unnecessary. But what they don't see is the future you're preparing for. What they don't hear is the call that woke you up in the night. What they don't know is the vision that's keeping you grounded. You're not doing this for applause. You're doing this for alignment. God is molding you into a vessel that He can trust with resources, responsibility, and reach. Millionaires in the kingdom aren't defined by numbers in a bank account. They're defined by their capacity to manage, multiply, and minister. Discipline is not the denial of joy. It is the protection of purpose. And stewardship is not about hoarding. It's about hosting heaven's plans on earth. So as you continue learning these lessons, know this. Every time you choose order over chaos, every time you choose purpose over pleasure, every time you say no to what's convenient in favor of what's eternal, you're building the foundation for supernatural increase. You're aligning with a future that requires more than talent. It requires trustworthiness. Unusual people and opportunities are being attracted to you, not because of anything you've done to manipulate outcomes, but because something on the inside of you is shifting. You're not chasing connections anymore, but divine connections are starting to chase you. You're not begging for visibility, yet people are beginning to notice you. What you're experiencing is not luck, it's alignment. When God begins to prepare you for increase, He first adjusts your internal frequency, and that adjustment sends out a signal that heaven has endorsed your elevation. People you never expected to speak with are suddenly reaching out. Mentors, leaders, collaborators, investors, divine encouragers, they are being drawn to your spirit, not just your skill. You'll notice they're not just coming with flattery or shallow intentions. They come carrying confirmation, strategy, partnership, wisdom, and sometimes access. These are not ordinary people. They're destiny helpers. And they don't show up when you're seeking popularity. They show up when you're walking in purpose. Opportunities are arising that you didn't ask for, didn't apply for, and couldn't have arranged yourself. Doors are opening without your hand on the handle. Conversations are happening about you in rooms you haven't stepped into yet. That's because when God breathes on your preparation, favor finds you, and favor has a fragrance. It attracts people, ideas, and pathways that were waiting on your maturity to manifest. But these divine alignments don't come randomly. They come when your life is postured for assignment. You're not being blessed with opportunities just for gain. You're being trusted with them for impact. You've shown God that you're ready to be faithful over little, so now He's beginning to expand your reach. He's not giving you influence for attention. He's giving you influence for purpose. The new relationships forming in your life carry weight. They carry spiritual significance. They are tied to your next level. And yes, it may feel strange. You may feel unqualified. You may wonder why you've been chosen. But that's the pattern of divine promotion. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. He sends the right people into your life when your identity is secure enough to handle connection without compromise. The more secure you become in who you are, the more space you make for the right people to recognize what you carry. Sometimes, the opportunity won't even look big at first. It may seem small, obscure, or even uncomfortable, but don't dismiss it. Hidden inside it may be a door to your next dimension. Sometimes your greatest breakthrough is camouflaged in an unexpected conversation or a simple act of obedience. That's why discernment is critical. You must be able to distinguish between distractions and divine setups, because not every open door is from God. But when God opens a door, no man can shut it. Be wise with these new relationships. Every person God sends into your life will either be a bridge or a burden, and the ones being drawn to you in this season will stretch you, grow you, and challenge you to think bigger and live deeper. They will not pull you backward, they will call you higher. You'll know them not just by how they speak, but by how they provoke the greatness inside of you. They don't come to compete, they come to complement your assignment. You're being positioned in such a way that even your presence is beginning to speak louder than your words. People can feel there's something different about you. And it's not personality, it's presence. It's the evidence of transformation. It's the aroma of destiny. God has marked your life and others are beginning to sense it. Some will be drawn to it and some will resist it. But either way, don't shrink back. Don't apologize for the attraction of purpose. You're not being arrogant, you're being aligned. When unusual people and opportunities begin to show up, it's a sign that your name is being whispered in heaven. It's a sign that preparation is colliding with timing. It's a sign that what you've been building in private is about to be revealed in public. You didn't force it, you didn't chase it, you became it. And now, what belongs to you is being sent to you. You feel a strong urgency to serve a bigger purpose. It's not ambition, it's assignment. It's not ego, it's eternity pressing in. There's a stirring in your soul that won't go away. A quiet but unrelenting voice keeps telling you, there's more. And not more in terms of things, applause, or visibility, but more in terms of meaning. You are no longer satisfied with just existing, just working a job, just accumulating possessions. You're yearning for impact, for significance, for legacy. What once mattered so much to you, titles, approval, comfort, is beginning to lose its grip, because now your spirit is tuned into something eternal. That urgency isn't emotional hype, it's spiritual signal. God is igniting something deep within you. He's shifting your focus from success to significance, from profit to purpose, from personal gain to kingdom advancement. You've come to a point where you can no longer be content with just living for yourself. There's a holy burden resting on you, an ache to do what you were born to do, to touch lives, to build something that outlasts you. It's not that your current life is wrong, it's that it's too small for what's growing inside you. This urgency makes you uncomfortable with routine. You may still do the same tasks, go to the same places, talk to the same people, but nothing feels the same. Your spirit is on edge. You sense time moving faster. You sense doors about to open, but only if you obey. You know that God is calling you out of the shadows into divine action. There's a mission that only you can fulfill, a people only you can reach, a part of God's heart only you can express. And heaven is tapping you on the shoulder, asking, will you answer the call? Everywhere you look, you see needs. You see injustice, brokenness, confusion, and you can't just scroll past it anymore. Your heart is no longer numb. You cry more. You think deeper. You ask, what can I do? And those questions aren't random. They're the evidence of awakening. God is burdening you with what burdens Him. He is entrusting you with His heart. He is placing the weight of nations, generations, and divine possibilities on your shoulders, not to crush you, but to commission you. This sense of urgency may come with discomfort. You'll find yourself pulling away from distractions you once loved. You'll find that shallow conversation no longer excites you. That surface level ambition no longer drives you. You'll begin to crave depth, to surround yourself with people who challenge your spirit, not just feed your emotions. You'll become obsessed with learning, with growing, with becoming a better steward of the gifts and callings placed within you, because you know the clock is ticking and heaven is waiting. The urgency is the evidence that you are pregnant with purpose, and like a mother in her final trimester, you feel the weight of what you're carrying. You feel the contractions of destiny. You can't delay anymore. You can't hide anymore. You can't pretend you're okay with a small life. You've seen too much, felt too much, heard too much. You've been called. And now the call is louder than the crowd, louder than the fear, louder than your excuses. God is not just calling you to be great. He's calling you to be useful. He's not just giving you dreams. He's giving you assignments. There are lives attached to your obedience. There are breakthroughs tied to your yes. What you're sensing is not just about you. It's about who's waiting on you. You're being pulled by purpose, pushed by vision, and driven by destiny. You've come too far to go back, and now the only thing left is to go all in. So now, if you've seen yourself in these signs, if your heart has burned with conviction as you listened, then know this. God is preparing you for something extraordinary. He's not just shaping your bank account. He's shaping your spirit. He's not only getting wealth to you, He's getting wealth through you. You're not being positioned for money alone. You're being positioned for ministry through abundance, for impact through increase, for purpose through provision. You are not called to chase riches. You're called to manifest the kingdom. And that requires preparation, transformation, and consecration. Millionaires in the spirit don't just make money. They move heaven. They don't just acquire things. They advance destiny. They live by divine conviction, steward with integrity, and give with radical obedience. So don't resist the stretching. Don't despise the process. Embrace the signs. They are divine signals that you're being trusted with more. You are not average. You are chosen. And if God is preparing you, nothing and no one can stop you. Your season of kingdom abundance is not coming. It has already begun. There are individuals born into bloodlines not simply to follow patterns, but to disrupt them. God doesn't place you in a family line by accident. He positions you. He appoints you. And sometimes the one He selects is not the most obvious one, but the one with the heaviest burden, the deepest questions, and the most painful path. You are not just different. You are chosen. And chosen people are not here to maintain traditions. They are here to transform them. If you've ever felt like the black sheep, the outsider, the one who couldn't settle into dysfunction, there's a reason. Let's walk through 7 prophetic signs that reveal you are the one chosen to break generational curses. You've always sensed it. An invisible barrier between you and those closest to you. Even in a room full of family, surrounded by laughter and familiarity, you felt strangely out of place. Not because of pride, not because you think you're better, but because something inside you just doesn't connect with what's around you. While others seem to move along in life accepting the status quo, there's a constant stirring within you that asks, Why? You look around and see patterns that are tolerated, dysfunctions that are ignored, conversations that circle around things that never change, and you simply cannot settle in that environment. You've tried to blend in, to go along, to find comfort in what everyone else seems content with, but the truth remains, you don't fit. This sense of isolation is not a flaw, it's a sign. A divine indication that you have been marked to break what others have tolerated for generations. From the beginning, your spirit has refused to settle in cycles that lead nowhere. There were moments when you questioned yourself. You wondered if something was wrong with you. Why can't you just enjoy what everyone else enjoys? Why does everything feel heavy when it should feel normal? But what you thought was rejection was actually redirection. Heaven was shielding you from becoming comfortable in systems that were never meant to last. You were born with a different rhythm, a different vision, a different appetite. And because of that, you couldn't sit at the same table and be satisfied. When others laugh at dysfunction, you grieve. When others ignore brokenness, you pray. When others repeat what they saw, you ask God for revelation to do things a new way. That's not because you're trying to stand out. It's because your spirit refuses to bow to what broke your bloodline. You are not the one who was rejected. You are the one who was selected. And the mark of that selection is the constant sense of not quite belonging. The psychologist says this. There's something deep, marqué or not, something impossible to unthrust. It will not block. Because God cannot use someone who is at home in dysfunction to bring healing to it. He has to raise someone who is discontent enough to challenge it. You've been given eyes to see differently, and that sight makes relationships difficult. You see through facades. You notice spiritual bondage. You feel the spiritual climate in a room before anyone else notices the tension. You discern what others try to cover up. And that level of sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's the evidence of your calling. When everyone else is asleep to the family spiritual condition, you're awake. While others are laughing at pain, you're weeping for transformation. You've been misunderstood, labeled dramatic, called too deep. But what they don't realize is that you're not reacting out of emotion. You're responding to a mandate on your life that will not allow you to settle for anything less than freedom. You were wired with a burden that others don't carry. While they're comfortable staying in survival mode, you were born with the blueprint for deliverance. You've tried to explain your perspective to those around you, only to be dismissed. You've been told to lighten up, to let things go, to stop being so serious. But what they see as seriousness is actually spiritual sensitivity. What they call intensity is actually divine responsibility. You carry the weight of generations, not by choice, but by calling. This disconnection has pushed you into solitude. Not the kind that isolates you in bitterness, but the kind that drives you into God's presence. In the quiet, away from the noise of cultural expectations and family traditions, you've learned to hear God's voice more clearly. You've learned to cry in secret while standing in public. You've learned how to intercede for people who don't even know they need prayer. Your difference has driven you to your knees, and that posture is what gives you strength. Being misunderstood by your own blood hurts. There's no way around it. You long for connection, for mutual understanding, for conversations that go beyond the surface. But you've come to realize that sometimes God will separate you, not to punish you, but to prepare you. You can't heal what you're entangled with. You can't fix what you're feeding from. And so little by little, He begins to strip away your dependencies until all you have left is Him. And the revelation that you were never called to fit in, you were called to stand out. There's a silent war inside you that most people can't see. You walk into familiar spaces, homes, churches, family gatherings, and something begins to stir in your spirit. While others are at peace, relaxed, laughing, and going on as if all is well, you are disturbed. Not by people, but by patterns. Not by personalities, but by the presence of deeply rooted dysfunction that everyone has accepted as normal. It's not that you're critical or judgmental, it's that you see things differently. What others are blind to, you discern. What others ignore, you feel. And what others tolerate, you cannot. There is a holy frustration rising inside of you, and it doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from assignment. This frustration is not emotional, it is spiritual. It is the evidence that you were not called to normalize what has crippled generations. You were not sent to smile and survive in systems that keep your bloodline in bondage. You were born to interrupt them. And that interruption starts with what you feel. That disturbance inside your spirit is heaven sounding an alarm that says, this is not okay. This must not continue. You look at broken marriages in your family and your heart breaks, while others just shake their heads and say, that's just how it is. You hear the way people speak, cursing themselves with every word, limiting their lives with every sentence, and your spirit flinches even though no one else says a word. You watch cycles of poverty, abuse, secrecy, addiction, bitterness, jealousy, and spiritual compromise repeat over and over again. And while others have made peace with it, you cannot. You've tried to be quiet, you've tried to go along with the flow, you've even asked God, why can't I just be normal? But that question is your answer. You can't be normal because your calling is not normal. You weren't chosen to accept what others have embraced. You were chosen to challenge it. And that challenge begins within. Long before you ever speak, preach, correct, or lead, God disturbs you internally. He allows your peace to be disrupted so that you'll never get comfortable in what He called you to confront. You may even feel guilty for how much things bother you. You may wonder, why does this affect me so deeply? Why can't I just laugh it off like they do? But what you must understand is that sensitivity is sacred. It is your spiritual compass. It's God pulling your heart toward purpose. That grief you feel is not weakness, it's awareness. You're not just emotional, you're awake. You're awake to the spiritual decay in places that look fine on the outside. You're awake to the pain behind the smiles. You're awake to the spiritual warfare in environments that others treat as safe. That level of awareness is dangerous to darkness. And that's exactly why you were chosen. You were not selected to agree with generational curses. You were called to abolish them. And before you can change something around you, God will let it torment you within. Because you will never conquer what you can tolerate. So He makes it intolerable. You can't rest. You can't blend in. You can't just let it be. That's not who you are. You are the curse breaker. And the first sign of a curse breaker is not a perfect plan, it's a perfect burden. When everyone else is laughing, you're weeping. When everyone else says it's always been this way, you cry out, it doesn't have to be. That cry may isolate you, but it also ignites your calling. God isn't looking for someone who's clever. He's looking for someone who's convicted. Convicted enough to feel pain no one else wants to talk about. Convicted enough to confront silence. Convicted enough to disrupt comfort zones that have become prisons in disguise. This is why conversations exhaust you. Because you're trying to speak life into places where death has been normalized. This is why some atmospheres feel suffocating. Because you're carrying light into rooms that have lived in darkness for generations. You can't play along. You weren't built for pretense. You were called to adjust. You were called to transform. And transformation begins when someone says, enough is enough. So enough, that person is you. The discomfort you feel is not a mistake. It is heaven's announcement that something must shift, and you are the one chosen to initiate that shift. Others may be content, but you are not. Others may laugh it off, but you cannot. Others may sleep, but you are awake, and you will remain awake until what is broken is made whole. There's a weight you carry that you've never been able to fully explain. It's not physical. It's not something others can see or even understand. But it's heavy. It sits in your spirit like a divine restlessness. You wake up with it. You go to sleep with it. Sometimes you cry, not because of what's happening to you, but because of what you sense is happening around you. You look at your family, your community, your bloodline, your culture, and something in you cries out for change. Even though you can't always put your finger on exactly what needs to shift. It's like a fire shut up in your bones, a burden placed in your heart before you even had the language to describe it. You may not come from a long line of preachers or prophets, but your soul is stirred like one. You carry a holy dissatisfaction, a deep conviction, a spiritual weight that whispers, there has to be more than this. There must be better than this. And you feel it so deeply that at times it drains you, isolates you, even frustrates you. This is the burden of a generational reformer, someone who's not just living for today, but chosen to impact generations. You don't need to have it all figured out to know that you're carrying something. You don't need a pulpit or a platform to feel called. The call isn't coming from outside of you. It's been echoing inside you your whole life. Before you ever heard a sermon, before anyone ever affirmed your gift, before you ever had a mentor or a ministry, there was already a knowing in your spirit, I am called to make a difference. You've probably found yourself looking at situations and wondering, why doesn't this sit right with me? Others can ignore it, they can walk past it, they can laugh it off, but you feel it. You sense the urgency, you ache for healing. You may not know what to say or do yet, but the ache is already evidence. It's proof that heaven has placed a burden in you for something bigger than you. And what's frustrating is that you often don't know why you feel the way you do. There are times you cry in prayer and can't explain the tears. There are moments when you feel deeply connected to someone's pain, even though you've never lived their story. That's because your spirit is carrying weight from God that your mind hasn't fully caught up with yet. You're carrying blueprints from heaven. You're carrying the cry of generations. You're carrying the unseen responsibility of being the one God has appointed to stop the cycle and reverse the curse. Sometimes that burden makes you feel out of place. You try to live a normal life, but normal won't let you rest. You try to quiet the calling, but the weight only grows. You try to ignore what you feel, but every time you do, something inside you grows restless. You weren't designed to live in comfort. You were called to live on assignment. An assignment always comes with a burden. You've probably been through seasons where you asked God, why do I feel this so deeply when no one else around me seems to care? The answer is simple. Because you are the one chosen to care. Not everyone carries what you carry. Not everyone was born with what was placed inside you. That burden is not a curse, it's a calling. And though it may feel heavy, it is also holy. You're not strange, you're not weak, you're called. And with that calling comes a spiritual weight that shapes your prayers, your thoughts, your priorities, and even your pain. You may feel lost at times because you don't know how it will all unfold. You may question your qualifications. You may even think God made a mistake choosing you. But trust this. God never gives a burden without first giving the grace to carry it. The same power that placed the weight on you will also empower you to walk it out. That inner heaviness you feel is not an accident. It's a divine deposit. You're not just burdened randomly. You've been burdened prophetically. Every great reformer began with a burden. Every deliverer in Scripture started with a restlessness. Moses felt it, Nehemiah felt it, Esther felt it, and now you feel it. The moment you realize that your heaviness is holy is the moment you stop running from it and start walking in it. You may not have all the answers, but you do have the weight. And that weight is the voice of heaven saying, you are the one I've chosen to change everything. There are some people who find God after life breaks them, but then there are others who were drawn to Him before they even understood what that drawing meant. If you look back on your life, you'll notice that you were always different, not just socially, not just emotionally, but spiritually. There was something inside of you, even as a child, that longed for something higher, something purer, something eternal. While others were distracted by the noise of life, your soul was quietly searching for the voice of God. No one taught you how to hunger for His presence. That longing wasn't inherited from a parent. It wasn't formed by a church. It was placed inside you by heaven. A divine magnet that kept pulling your heart toward the Father even when you didn't know why. And that pull has never left you. In fact, the older you got, the stronger it became. You couldn't explain it, you couldn't shake it. And truthfully, you didn't want to. You were drawn to Him, not casually, not occasionally, but intensely. There was a fire that started burning in you early, and it has never gone out. This hunger didn't make you popular, it made you peculiar. While others were playing, you were praying. While others were chasing trends, you were chasing truth. While others were comfortable being lukewarm, you craved the heat of real intimacy with God. That craving isolated you. It made you feel out of place, even in church circles. You weren't interested in routine religion. You were desperate for real encounters, and that desperation is not a sign of immaturity. It's a sign of calling. God draws those He intends to use. And when He draws you early, it's because He plans to use you deeply. You weren't pulled toward God for no reason. You weren't curious about spiritual things because of coincidence. From the womb, you were marked, set apart, called, not for performance, but for purpose. And that purpose required intimacy. He began cultivating your relationship with Him before your gifts were even developed, before your identity was even formed. He knew that if He could get your heart, He could shape your destiny. So while others were partying, you were pondering. While others ignored their convictions, you felt crushed when you grieved the Holy Spirit. Your conscience wasn't like everyone else's. You couldn't get away with what others got away with. You felt the weight of your decisions. You cried over things most people laughed off. You feared the Lord not just because of what you were taught, but because of what you felt in His presence. There were seasons where you tried to run. You tried to mute the call. You even tried to fit in with others who didn't carry the same passion. But you couldn't stay in those places for long. Conviction chased you. Grace confronted you, and His love would not let you settle. Every time you drifted, He pulled you back, not with punishment, but with presence. And every time He pulled you back, your heart broke all over again with holy desire. That's how you know you were chosen. Not because of perfection, not because of status, but because your spirit has always longed for Him. Your tears in worship weren't taught, they were triggered by encounters. Your hunger for the Word didn't come from religious obligation, it came from revelation. When God is raising up someone to break generational curses, He doesn't wait until they're qualified. He starts pulling them early, forming them in secret, speaking to them in silence, and developing them in seasons of isolation. And when you tried to explain what you felt, most people didn't understand. They thought you were being too deep, too spiritual, too intense. But what they didn't realize is that you didn't choose this hunger, it chose you. You couldn't help being different. You weren't trying to be better, you were simply responding to a call that was louder than your comfort. And that response, even when you didn't fully understand it, was the beginning of your journey into divine purpose. Your early hunger is proof of your early anointing. God started with you early because He needed to prepare you for something heavy. Your appetite for Him is not accidental. It's prophetic. It's heaven's way of showing you, even before you knew yourself, that you were chosen to carry something sacred. While others were being entertained, you were being equipped. While others were getting applause, you were getting encounters. And those encounters have shaped the very core of who you are. The reason you were drawn to God early and so intensely is because He has been preparing you for a life that's not ordinary. He's been shaping your heart to hear Him, to carry Him, and to represent Him in a world that desperately needs freedom. You weren't just called to believe, you were called to lead. And leaders must know His voice before they ever use theirs. There's a painful truth that many chosen individuals carry silently. They've been under attack for as long as they can remember. Not just in adulthood, not just after they discovered their calling, but from the very beginning, from childhood. From the earliest moments of innocence, there was a target on their back that they couldn't see, but they could feel. If you were chosen to break generational curses, chances are you didn't have a gentle introduction to life. You had to survive things you didn't ask for. You had to carry weight no child should carry. And while others seemed to grow up with ease, you were thrown into spiritual warfare before you even understood what warfare was. It started with rejection. You were the one overlooked, misunderstood, or even unwanted, sometimes by family, sometimes by those who were supposed to protect you. You felt isolated in rooms full of people. You sensed a distance between you and others, even as a child. That rejection wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. The enemy saw what was on your life and tried to shut you down before you ever discovered it. He couldn't stop your calling, but he tried to break your confidence. He couldn't remove the anointing, so he tried to infect your identity. He hoped that if he wounded you young enough, you would never rise into who God created you to be. You weren't just attacked physically or emotionally, you were attacked in your soul. Depression tried to creep in when you didn't even have the language for it. Fear became a shadow that followed you around. Insecurity grew in places where love should have lived. Trauma became your teacher. Pain became familiar. And yet through all of that, you kept waking up. You kept hoping. You kept surviving, even when you didn't know how. That wasn't just survival, it was divine preservation. God didn't remove the storm, but He carried you through it because He had plans for what you would become after it. Chosen people are attacked early because their assignment is generational. The enemy knows that if he lets you live, heal, and grow, you won't just be free, you'll set others free. You won't just come out, you'll break chains that have held your entire family line. And so the attacks begin early. Not because you're weak, but because you're dangerous. Not because you're cursed, but because you're called. The pain you endured was not a sign of God's absence. It was proof of your purpose. You probably noticed that others around you didn't go through the same level of battles. While they had peace, you had pressure. While they had stability, you had storms. While they laughed through childhood, you cried in silence. You wondered why your life felt so different, why you had to grow up so fast, why your mind was always heavy, your heart always burdened. And for a long time, the enemy tried to make you believe that you were just unlucky or unworthy. But now you're beginning to see it clearly. You were chosen early, and so the battle came early. Your childhood attacks weren't random, they were strategic. Hell had intelligence on your future, and the assaults against you were designed to sabotage it. But what the enemy didn't count on was your resilience. What he didn't anticipate was that every attack would drive you closer to God, not away from Him. That every wound would open your heart to healing. That every scar would become a testimony. You didn't just endure the warfare, you became trained by it. You learned how to fight in the Spirit when others were still asleep in the natural. You learned how to discern, pray, protect, and survive in places where others would have broken. Now you carry an authority that can't be bought, a strength that didn't come from a book, a wisdom that was forged in fire. You understand the enemy's tactics because you've lived through them. And because of that, you can lead others out of places you once cried in. You can spot darkness from a distance because you've lived in the shadows and learned how to find light. Your discernment isn't intellectual, it's personal. You've been there. And because of that, you'll never be the same. You didn't choose the warfare, but the warfare confirmed your worth. You didn't ask for the attacks, but the attacks revealed your anointing. And while others saw you struggling, heaven saw you surviving, and not just surviving, but being shaped. You're not just a victim of childhood pain, you're a vessel of generational power. And what the enemy started in your childhood, God will use for His glory in your calling. There's something about the way you see life that sets you apart. Even as a child, you noticed things others overlooked. You asked questions that made adults pause. You had insights that did match your age. While others were distracted by the surface, you were drawn to the root. You didn't always have the vocabulary to express it, but there was a depth in your spirit that made people wonder how someone so young could carry so much understanding. It wasn't learned, it wasn't taught, it was given. Wisdom has followed you, not because you've lived longer or studied more, but because heaven deposited it in you for a purpose greater than your environment. This wisdom is not about having all the answers. It's about seeing with spiritual eyes. It's about discerning motives, understanding patterns, and perceiving truth even when it's hidden. You walk into situations and immediately sense what others miss. You can sit in silence and pick up on things that others still can't explain with words. That's not personality, that's prophetic wiring. It's the mark of someone called to lead their bloodline into a new future. When God raises someone to break generational curses, He often gives them wisdom that bypasses earthly qualifications. Because if you only operated in what you were taught, you'd repeat what you inherited. But because you carry wisdom that's divinely imparted, you begin to see the cracks in the foundation. You begin to understand that some things aren't just family traditions, they're spiritual strongholds. You start to notice that what's being called normal is actually toxic. And this kind of awareness doesn't come from books, it comes from burden. People around you may not understand it, they may even resent it. Your inside may come off as arrogance. But you're not trying to be superior. You're trying to survive. You're speaking from pride. You're speaking from pain. You've watched patterns destroy lives, and something in you refuses to stay silent. Your wisdom doesn't show up to impress, it shows up to intervene. You speak truth even when it costs you relationships. You sense danger even when everyone else is clapping. You've had moments where you had to make decisions beyond your years. Not because you wanted to, but because you had to. Your wisdom was forged in the fire. You've been through storms that taught you things no school ever could. You've cried prayers that revealed truths no pastor ever preached. You've sat in silence and received revelation no conference ever covered. That's what makes your voice different. That's what makes your leadership weighty. You didn't just learn, you lived. And because of that, when you speak, there's power. When you move, there's clarity. When you pray, there's alignment. People sense that what you carry didn't come cheap. And here's the truth. That wisdom makes you lonely. It sets you apart. It makes conversations difficult and crowds uncomfortable. You find yourself in rooms where your spirit is awake, but your voice is quiet, because you realize that most people aren't ready to hear what you carry. But don't let that silence convince you to shut down. Don't let the lack of applause make you doubt your perspective. You weren't given wisdom for popularity. You were given wisdom for legacy. You were chosen to change the trajectory of everything connected to your name. God had to give you wisdom early because He knew He was sending you into a family, a culture, a generation that was blind to what you would see. You had to speak what others wouldn't say. You had to question what others accepted. You had to build what others never imagined. That takes courage, but more than that, it takes clarity. And clarity is exactly what you've been given. You see the spiritual roots of emotional battles. You sense the demonic strategies behind generational pain. You discern the difference between surface level fixes and true healing. So when people ask, how do you know that? You don't always have an answer. Because the truth is, you didn't learn it, you received it. It's grace, it's oil, it's a download from heaven to prepare you for what's coming. And though others may ignore your insight now, there will come a time when they will seek it. Because your wisdom is not just to help you navigate life, it's to help others escape what held them back. You were given this wisdom because you were chosen for war. And wisdom is your weapon. You don't need to fight with fists when you can fight with revelation. You don't need to shout when your discernment speaks louder than words. You don't need credentials when you carry authority. You were set apart for this. And the wisdom in you is not accidental. It's evidence that heaven is equipping you to lead generations out of darkness into light. There's a weight and wonder that comes with being first to step out, first to speak up, first to break free, first to rise above what's always been accepted. When you're chosen to break generational curses, God often positions you to do things no one else in your family has ever done. You become the pioneer, the one who walks into unknown territory. Not because it's easy or popular, but because you refuse to let history repeat itself. You look around and see patterns, traditions, and limitations that have defined your bloodline for decades, maybe centuries. And something inside you says, this is where it ends. You may not know how to fix everything, but you've decided you won't settle. You may not have the full blueprint, but you've chosen to move. And that movement, that decision to try something different, to live at a higher standard, to reach for what others have only dreamed about, that is what makes you dangerous to darkness. Because when you're first, you're not just fighting for your future, you're fighting for everyone after you. Being first means walking roads that haven't been paved. It means having to make decisions without a model. You can't look back for a clear example because there isn't one. You're the one being shaped to become the example. Others had permission to follow the cycle, but you were called to break it. Others lived by the expectation, but you were born to live by revelation. And that's why your journey often feels unfamiliar, lonely, and misunderstood. Because what you're building has never been seen in your family before. You're the first to finish school, the first to stay married, the first to walk away from generational religion and pursue truth, the first to confront abuse, the first to confront the silence, the first to say, I love you when no one ever heard it growing up, the first to apologize, the first to speak healing instead of harm, the first to save, to build, to invest, to walk in holiness instead of compromise. And it feels heavy sometimes, not because you're weak, but because pioneering always costs more than copying. It's not that you think you're better, it's that you believe there's better, and you're willing to pay the price to reach it. The attacks on your life, the resistance you face, the internal battles you fight, these are not random. They are connected to the fact that you're building something new, and every new structure disrupts old systems. You may not see the full fruit yet, but every prayer you've prayed, every cycle you've broken, every hard decision you've made has been sowing seeds for a future that looks nothing like your past. And the enemy knows that if you succeed, others will follow. Because once the first person walks through a locked door, it's no longer locked, it's open. That's why your warfare has been intense. That's why you've been misunderstood. That's why you've had to explain your decisions over and over again to people who still don't get it. But God didn't call you to be understood. He called you to be obedient. And obedience often leads you where no one else has gone, into realms where you have no mentors, no maps, and no applause. Just a quiet confidence that you were sent there on purpose. You're not crazy. You're not lost. You're first. They're the first to say, we don't talk to our kids like that anymore. The first to say, our family will pray together now. The first to say, we don't borrow peace from substances. We find peace in God. The first to say, our daughters will know their worth, and our sons will not grow up without direction. The first to choose purpose over popularity, faith over fear, integrity over survival, healing over hiding. And though you've cried behind closed doors, wondering why the path has been so hard, God has seen every tear. He knows the battles you've fought in silence. And He honors those who walk by faith, not familiarity. You've had to learn as you go, build as you walk, trust without answers. But that is the journey of the first. You are not failing, you are forging. And every step you take is making a way for others to walk in freedom. You were not born to repeat, you were born to redefine. You're doing what no one else before you could do. And one day someone in your bloodline will stand tall and say, because of them, I didn't have to start from scratch. They will walk through the doors you kicked open. They will reap from the prayers you planted. They will heal in the places you bled. And that will be the legacy of the first. You were not born just to survive the cycles. You were born to transform them. You are not a victim of your family's history. You are the architect of a new legacy. You were sent to interrupt what has always been, so what has never been can finally be born. You were chosen, not because you were the strongest, not because you were the most qualified, but because God knew you would say yes. You're not just breaking curses, you're building covenants. You're not just escaping the past, you're establishing the future. And the enemy didn't fight you because of your past, he fought you because of your assignment. You were called to restore what was lost, reclaim what was stolen, and reestablish God's original intent for your bloodline. Heaven has entrusted you with this mandate, not to carry the weight of your family, but to carry the wisdom to lead them out. Not to conform to dysfunction, but to call your generation into divine alignment. And when you feel like giving up, remember, this is bigger than you. This is kingdom business. This is legacy work. This is eternity unfolding through your obedience. So rise up, curse breaker. Dry your tears. Wipe your face. Adjust your crown. This battle chose you because you were chosen for victory. And when your name is mentioned in future generations, they will not speak of the curse. They will speak of the one who broke it.